In the heart of Calvera's upscale district stood Lotus Radiance, the kind of spa that didn't need advertising. Its entrance alone did the talking. Polished teak doors, soft instrumental music floating through scented air, and a brass sign engraved with the words "Healing in Perfection." Inside, nothing was out of place. The air smelled of lemongrass and order. At 32, Anita Varma ruled this place like a queen. She wasn't warm or kind or particularly liked, but she was respected. Clients whispered her name like a secret. The elite wives of diplomats and business magnates trusted her with their skin, their privacy, and their image. She gave them what they paid for, flawless results. And in return, she demanded silence, punctuality, and obedience. To her staff, Anita was both a mentor and a warning. She never raised her voice, yet every instruction carried weight. Her rules were gospel: no gossip, no mistakes, and no excuses. The spa's signature calm wasn't natural, it was enforced. Even the sound of footsteps was trained to be soft. Anita's precision came from somewhere darker. She had built Lotus Radiance from a tiny two-room studio behind a pharmacy. She clawed her way up with a mix of intelligence, discipline, and the kind of cold ambition that burned quietly. She slept little, ate less, and trusted no one. People said she was beautiful, but her beauty was the kind that made you hold your breath, sharp, deliberate, and unapproachable. She lived just above the spa, in a minimalist apartment she shared with Rohan Mehta, a paramedic 4 years younger. To outsiders, they were a quiet couple. He was calm, polite, and careful with words, the kind of man who blended into the background. In truth, Rohan orbited Anita the way planets orbit the sun, pulled in by her gravity, but scorched if he got too close. Their relationship ran on routine. He cooked, she worked. He waited, she commanded. Some nights, he'd find her reviewing invoices at midnight, the glow of her laptop casting blue light across her flawless face. She never noticed when he lingered in the doorway. Everyone who worked for Anita learned quickly that she was addicted to control. Control over the business, her image, even the air temperature in each treatment room. She could spot a crooked towel from 10 feet away. And when she smiled, it was never spontaneous, only strategic. To her, emotions were inefficiencies. Love, trust, empathy, those were luxuries for weaker people. The only thing she trusted was structure. And it was that same obsession with perfection that made her believe she could manage everyone. Her employees, her boyfriend, even fate itself. But behind the soft lighting and glass shells of imported skincare, something was shifting. The silence inside Lotus Radiance was no longer peaceful. It was pressurized. The staff moved with the fear of those who knew they were being watched. And Rohan, once her quiet shadow, had begun to look at her differently. Not with devotion, but with something like distance. Anita didn't see it yet. She couldn't imagine her empire collapsing, least of all from within. But in a place built on stillness, she had forgotten one rule. When everything is perfectly silent, it only takes one breath for the whole world to burn. When Meena Das first stepped in a Lotus Radiance, she looked nothing like the other women who worked there. Her sari was faded, her sandals worn, her hair pulled back in a knot that said practicality, not fashion. She held a folder with old certificates and a trembling sense of hope. She had once owned a small salon on the edge of town, Meena's Touch. It didn't last. Debt, bad luck, and an unreliable assistant had swallowed it whole. By the time she came to Anita Varma, she was broke, humiliated, and ready to start over, on any terms. Anita interviewed her for exactly 9 minutes. She didn't ask about Meena's dreams or family, just her punctuality and tolerance for long hours. At the end, she said, "You'll start at the desk. No tips, no treatments. Just don't make noise." From that day on, Meena became a fixture, always there, never noticed. She arrived before sunrise, arranged appointment cards, wiped down the front counter, and memorized the scents clients preferred. She was polite, efficient, and invisible, the kind of employee who disappears into the background of success stories. But Anita noticed her in a different way, not as a person, but as part of the furniture. She called her the girl at the desk, even in front of clients. Once, when Mina hesitated to answer a phone call during a facial session, Anita looked up and said, "Try being useful, not present." It was said softly, but it burned. Mina smiled anyway. She had learned long ago that humiliation could be survived if endured quietly enough. Yet silence doesn't erase resentment. It stores it. And Lotus Radiance was a place where silence was currency, a thick, perfumed quiet that hid the noise beneath people's thoughts. Rowan Mehta was the first to break it. He began stopping by the reception desk between ambulance shifts, leaning casually against the counter while Mina entered invoices. At first, their conversations were harmless, small talk about tea, traffic, and the unbearable heat of Calvera. But in those small exchanges, something softened. He told her he used to play the guitar, that Anita didn't like noise in the house, that he missed the way his mother used to laugh. Mina didn't say much, just listened, nodded, and once or twice smiled. For Rohan, that small kindness was oxygen. For Mina, it was something she hadn't felt in years, being seen. Anita never caught them in a compromising moment. She didn't need to. She could feel it, the shift in rhythm, the delayed responses, the lowered eyes when she entered the room. She began sending abrupt text messages from upstairs. Check inventory again. Why is the till short? Do not leave the front unattended. No one dared mention what was obvious, that Lotus Radiance had started to hum with tension. Clients still came. Oil still burned in the diffusers. The same Tibetan bowls played on repeat. But under the surface, something fragile was changing shape. Mina no longer jumped when Anita spoke. Rohan lingered longer by the desk. And Anita, for the first time, found her reflection unsettling. Not because of a wrinkle or flaw, but because she sensed it, the quiet rebellion of a woman she had underestimated. By late summer, Lotus Radiance had lost its serenity. The air still smelled of jasmine and eucalyptus, but beneath it was something sour, a current of suspicion that no diffuser could hide. Anita Varma began to feel it first. She'd come downstairs at random hours, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp. She asked unnecessary questions, flipped through appointment logs, checked the petty cash drawer twice a day. When she spoke to Mina, her voice had a new edge, quieter, colder, the kind of tone that made people apologize without knowing why. Still, nothing tangible had changed. No one had been caught whispering. No one had broken a rule. Yet everyone felt the shift, an invisible wire tightening through the spa's perfect silence. Rohan Mehta, once content to keep his distance, started spending more time at the reception area. Sometimes he'd bring a snack for Mina or ask about her bus route. Other times, he'd just lean against the counter, scrolling through his phone. Harmless on the surface, but charged with unspoken electricity. To outsiders, it might have looked like a simple workplace friendship. But in a place ruled by control, even small acts of warmth were rebellion. Anita saw it, every glance, every lingering moment. She didn't accuse, not directly. She simply began correcting Mina more often, always in public. You missed a call. The towels aren't folded properly. Next time, be ready before I ask. Her words were never shouted, yet they cut deeper for their precision. That day, after being scolded in front of a client, Mina's composure didn't crack. She just nodded and returned to her desk. But her silence had changed. It wasn't submission anymore. It was endurance, quiet, deliberate, and patient. Later that evening, Rohan lingered as Anita closed the register. He said softly, "You're being too hard on her." Anita looked up, startled, not by the words, but by who said them. Rohan had never questioned her before. "Too hard," she repeated. "You think kindness keeps this place running?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The pause was enough. For the first time, Anita felt the ground under her empire tremble. After that night, her messages to Mina became shorter, colder. Inventory. Now. Reconcile totals. Stay late. It was as if she was trying to squeeze control back into her hands. Unaware, it was already slipping away. Meanwhile, Mina began to change in small, almost invisible ways. She stopped calling Rohan sir. She laughed more, a soft, almost secret laugh that irritated Anita more than outright defiance ever could. The staff started noticing too. They moved carefully, speaking in low tones, pretending not to see the tension that filled every corner of the spa. Lotus Radiance was still immaculate on the outside. White orchids at the door, gold-rimmed mirrors shining. But inside, it pulsed with discomfort. Anita didn't know it yet, but her need for order had created the perfect environment for chaos. She believed she was the only one in control, yet she was already the one being watched. Soon, her rules, the same ones she'd built her kingdom upon, would become the blueprint for her own destruction. And the quietest woman in the room was learning exactly how to make that happen. It was supposed to be a normal afternoon, one of those blistering Calvera days when even the pavement shimmered in the heat. But inside Lotus Radiance, the temperature was always perfect, 72 degrees, steady, scented with lemongrass and sandalwood. Anita Varma liked it that way. Control wasn't just a habit, it was her religion. That morning, she told the staff they could leave early. "I'll be testing the new thermal capsule myself," she said. "I want privacy." No one questioned it. Anita tested every new treatment before it reached a client. If something bore her brand name, it had to pass her standards first. The new capsule was the pride of the spa's expansion, a sleek white pod imported from Singapore, capable of adjusting temperature, humidity, and even oxygen levels through a voice-controlled app. It was futuristic, expensive, and temperamental. Anita called it the future of luxury wellness. Before she entered the treatment room, Meena Das prepared everything with ritual precision, just as Anita had taught her. Fresh eucalyptus towels folded on a bench. A jug of cold water placed neatly by the wall. The capsule polished until it reflected light like glass. She checked the power cables twice, then stepped back quietly as Anita entered wearing a thin cotton robe. Anita closed the door behind her. No one followed. The soundproof walls swallowed the noise of the street below. Minutes passed, then half an hour. At 2:45 p.m., a junior technician returned to the spa. She'd forgotten her phone charger. The building was unusually still. From the hallway, she caught a strange scent, sharper than the usual oils, almost metallic, tinged with something burnt. She hesitated, then knocked. No answer. She opened the door. Inside, the air felt suffocating. The capsule's control panel blinked red, its surface fogged from condensation. The temperature reading glowed an alarming 65 degrees Celsius, 149 degrees Fahrenheit, far beyond the normal therapeutic range. The emergency timer had expired, yet the system still hummed. Anita lay motionless inside, her skin flushed, eyes half open. No signs of struggle, no sound, no broken glass, just eerie stillness. The technician screamed. Within minutes, Rohan Mehta arrived from the clinic down the street. He dropped to his knees beside the pod, shouting Anita's name, performing CPR with trembling hands. But she was gone. Her pulse silent. The official report later listed cardiac arrest induced by extreme heat exposure. It looked like a tragic malfunction, the kind of freak accident that happens once in a lifetime. No bruises, no external injuries, no signs of foul play. Police photographed the room, unplugged the device, and took witness statements. Everything looked routine, almost too routine. Anita's body was released within 24 hours. Her family arrived from another city and arranged a quiet cremation. In the following days, Lotus Radiance reopened under dimmed lights and forced smiles. Clients murmured condolences, staff whispered prayers, and Meena worked behind the counter, calm and composed. She didn't cry, didn't flinch, didn't falter. To the world, it was just a horrible accident. To those inside the spa, it was something else entirely, a story that didn't make sense. And as the capsule sat unplugged in that locked treatment room, gleaming white and silent, it waited, holding its secrets, line by line, inside its flawless machine heart. For a full week, the thermal capsule sat untouched in the locked treatment room of Lotus Radiance, a white monument to perfection and death. The scent of eucalyptus still lingered, faint but haunting, clinging to the air like memory. When the technician from manufacturer finally arrived, he didn't expect to find much. Equipment failures happened. Machines overheated. People made mistakes. But this capsule didn't look broken. It looked deliberate. He started with the software logs. The pod's internal computer recorded every command, every temperature change, every user connection. Most of the data looked routine: session durations, power cycles, maintenance checks. But then he noticed something strange. Two devices had been connected during Anita's final session. The first belonged to her. Her phone was found next to the pod, screen cracked from the heat. The second was a mystery. The Bluetooth MAC address didn't match any of the spa's registered devices. When traced, it led to Mina Das's phone. At first, no one wanted to believe it. Connections could remain active from old tests or installations. But the timestamps told a different story. Between 2 o'clock and 2:25 p.m., someone using that second device had accessed the capsule's control system, overriding the temperature limit and disabling the automatic shutoff. This wasn't an accident. It was a sequence. Clean, intentional, irreversible. When investigators opened the pod itself, the real horror surfaced. The emergency release handle, the one designed to let users open the capsule from inside, wouldn't budge. A closer look revealed why. A small tension clamp had been inserted into the hinge slot from the maintenance panel at the back. It was the kind of part you'd find in a drawer of spare hardware. Small, unremarkable, and deadly effective. From the outside, the door opened normally. From the inside, it was locked tight. Then came events. The capsule's lower air grills, meant to regulate heat and airflow, were sealed with industrial-grade aluminum tape, applied from inside the service compartment, invisible unless you disassembled the frame. It looked professional. No mess, no residue. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. When forensic experts recreated the conditions, the findings were chilling. With airflow blocked and temperature fixed at 65 degrees Celsius, test subjects showed disorientation within 5 minutes. After 15, coordination collapsed. By 20, consciousness faded. Escape would have been impossible. Anita Varma hadn't died of a malfunction. She had been trapped deliberately, efficiently, and silently. Detectives turned their attention back to the spa. Who had access to the maintenance compartment? Who knew how the Bluetooth system worked? The list was short. Only Anita, Mina, and Rohan. Rohan was ruled out quickly. His hospital shift logs placed him off-site when the override occurred. That left Mina, the quiet woman at the desk, the one Anita trusted least and watched most. When officers questioned her, Mina didn't panic. She said she'd helped install firmware updates when the capsule first arrived. Maybe her phone had stayed paired accidentally. Her tone was calm, her eyes steady. But calm wasn't innocence. It was calculation. Behind that desk, behind her polite nods and folded hands, Mina had hidden something darker than anyone had imagined. And the perfect machine that killed Anita Varma had just become the first witness. The discovery of the tampered capsule changed everything. What had once looked like a freak malfunction now carried fingerprints of intention. Not physical ones, but digital, coded, deliberate. Still, even with mounting evidence, detectives knew one thing. Machines don't kill out of hatred. People do. The question was why. When investigators combed through Anita Varma's financial records, they found a wire transfer made only hours before her death. 500,000 rupees, sent from Anita's business account to Mina Das. The memo line read, "Debt clearance, full and final." At first glance, it looked generous, almost benevolent. Colleagues whispered that Anita must have been helping Mina rebuild her life. But nothing Anita did was without structure. Detectives pulled her emails, notes, and contracts, uncovering the truth. The money wasn't a gift. It was a chain. The payment was part of a written proposal Anita had drafted, a plan for Mina to reopen her old salon, but not under her own name. It would operate as a satellite branch of Lotus Radiance. Mina would handle daily operations, but ownership, branding, and profits would all flow through Anita's company. Mina wouldn't own inventory, couldn't set prices, and would receive a commission reviewed quarterly. On paper, it looked like an opportunity. In reality, it was indentured freedom. For Anita, it was control disguised as charity. For Mina, it was the final humiliation, a reminder that no matter how hard she tried, she would always belong to someone else. People who knew her said Mina had once been proud, even ambitious. But after losing her first business, she'd learned to swallow that pride. Until now. Until a woman like Anita Varma offered to help her, not out of kindness, but ownership. Detective Narayan, who led the case, later said, the motive wasn't money. It was reclamation. She wanted her name back. In the weeks before the murder, small details slipped through unnoticed. Mina had stayed late after closing, claiming to be balancing books. She'd requested access to the Bluetooth app during equipment installation, saying she needed to log test runs. She even borrowed tape and clamps from the supply closet under the pretext of fixing a shelf. Each move seemed harmless. Together, they were the architecture of murder. But it wasn't only resentment that fueled her. There was someone else, Rohan Mehta. Text messages later recovered from Rohan's phone painted a subtle but damning picture. Late-night exchanges filled with shared frustration, coded sympathy, and occasional bitterness toward Nita. She owns everything, Mina wrote once. Even the air. Rohan's replies were softer, evasive, but complicit in tone. He never told her to stop. He never warned her. Instead, he fed her bitterness, validating it under the mask of concern. Then came a message that would later echo in court. If she wants to keep everything, she can keep the machine too. Sent the night before Anita's death. Deleted minutes later. When questioned, Rohan denied involvement. He said the words were metaphorical, a venting of frustration, nothing more. But prosecutors would later argue that, in that moment, the line between fantasy and plan had already vanished. To the world, Mina Das had been a woman rebuilt from ruin. Inside, she was a wound that never healed, covered by layers of obedience and quiet rage. When Anita transferred that final payment, she believed she was closing a chapter. But for Mina, it was the start of one. A story written not in ink, but in heat, silence, and perfect control. The kind of story that ends exactly the way she intended. The courtroom in Calvera was built for routine cases, traffic violations, petty fraud, civil disputes, not for a story that read like science fiction. Yet for 2 long weeks, its wooden benches held reporters, forensic engineers, and silent onlookers drawn by the strange headline. A murder without a weapon. The prosecution didn't start with emotion. They started with machinery. On the first day, a forensic technician wheeled in a large monitor and pulled up the control logs from Lotus Radiance's thermal capsule. Each line of code appeared on the screen like a pulse from beyond the grave. Timestamps, temperatures, user IDs. The data told a story clearer than any witness could. At exactly 2:07 p.m., the capsule's Bluetooth connected to 2 devices. At 2:10, the safety limit was raised from 55 degrees Celsius to 65 degrees Celsius. At 2:12, the emergency shutoff was disabled. And by 2:26, the connection ended. 26 minutes of silent, controlled death. The technician then described the physical sabotage. He held up photographs of the tension clamp wedged into the hinge mechanism. A small, silver fragment no larger than a paperclip, yet strong enough to trap a person inside. He pointed to the tape residue found along the vent slits, the clean, precise seal that had choked off air circulation. This was not improvisation, he said. It was preparation. It was methodical. The courtroom fell silent. Then came the digital forensic expert, a young woman from Chennai who had reconstructed the Bluetooth pairing data. She showed how Mina's phone had remained connected to the capsule even after Anita's death. She displayed the recovered screenshots from the device's companion app. One image in particular showing the temperature bar sliding upward. No one in the room spoke when the prosecutor asked, "Who would have known how to access this system?" "Only someone who had installed it," she replied. And that was Ms. Das. Mina Das sat expressionless. Her sari was plain gray, her hair pulled tight, her face unreadable. When asked about the pairing logs, she claimed ignorance. "I helped set up the system months ago. Maybe it remembered my phone." But the timestamps didn't lie. Neither did the bank transfer, nor the deleted text messages between her and Rohan Mehta. If she wants to keep everything, she can keep the machine too. Almost done. Just breathe. The messages appeared on the courtroom screen like whispers frozen in time. Rohan, sitting in the defendant's chair beside her, didn't look up. He had confessed only to erasing data after Anita's death. To protect Mina, he said, but denied knowing what she had planned. The prosecution didn't need him to confess. The pattern was enough. The silence, the timing, the precision, all of it told the story. When it was time for closing arguments, the prosecutor stood in front of the jury and said quietly, "We're used to seeing weapons, knives, guns, poisons. But sometimes murder hides inside systems built for comfort. This was not rage. It was control. The victim died inside a machine that worked perfectly because someone made sure it did. The defense tried to argue residual Bluetooth connections, accidental heat increase, and human error. But the logic collapsed under the weight of the evidence. The machine had recorded its own testimony, and it spoke louder than any witness. When the verdict came, it was almost anticlimactic. Meena Das, guilty of first-degree murder. Rohan Mehta, guilty of abetment and destruction of evidence. The judge's words echoed softly across the chamber. This act represents silent cruelty, deliberate, measured, and precise. A crime without violence, but with purpose. Reporters called it the Calvera capsule case. To the people who'd known Anita Varma, it was something else, the ultimate irony. A woman obsessed with control, killed by someone who learned it from her. Lotus Radiance never reopened. 2 months after the verdict, a small crew arrived early one morning to strip the spa of its fixtures. The gold signage was taken down, mirrors unscrewed from the walls, orchids thrown away with the trash. What had once been Calvera's most exclusive sanctuary now stood hollow and gray. The treatment room, where Anita Varma died, remained sealed until the capsule was dismantled and removed under police supervision. Its glossy white shell, now marked with brown forensic tape and numbered evidence tags, was wheeled out through the back alley, covered in plastic like a crime scene relic. It was no longer a machine for beauty. It was a machine for death. The capsule was sent to a government lab in Kochi, where it sits in a temperature-controlled evidence vault to this day. The clamp that jammed its hinge, the sealed vents, and the Bluetooth logs were archived as part of what investigators would later call the most technologically precise murder in Kerala's history. The employees of Lotus Radiance scattered quietly. None of them returned for their reference letters. They found jobs in smaller salons, avoiding questions about the spa or its late owner. In Calvera, the story became an uncomfortable memory, something people mentioned in whispers over tea, followed by long silences. Meena Das was sent to the women's correctional facility in Ernakulam. Her behavior, according to prison records, was disciplined, detached, and without remorse. She declined to join the tailoring program, never attended chapel, and refused all interviews. She followed rules the same way she once followed Anita's orders, efficiently, without emotion. Rohan Mehta, housed in a separate men's prison, lived much the same way. He declined therapy, avoided conversation, and spent his days in silence, requesting only a newspaper he never read. Whatever had bound the two of them together, resentment, dependence, or love, dissolved the moment the cell doors closed. For a time, the world moved on. The headlines faded. The trial files gathered dust. But those who worked the case remembered it vividly, not because of its brutality, but because of its precision. It wasn't rage or chaos that killed Anita Varma. It was calculation. It was design. And perhaps that's what made it so terrifying. Anita had lived her life believing that control could prevent suffering. That order was the antidote to weakness. In the end, her death proved the opposite. Control didn't save her. It destroyed her, mirrored perfectly by the woman she tried to manage. One detective put it best years later. The spa didn't malfunction. The system worked exactly as intended. Only the user changed. Now, in that empty building on Calvert Street, the scent of lemongrass has long disappeared. The walls have been repainted, the name replaced. But on humid nights, locals swear the air there still feels too warm, as if the room itself remembers the heat that once refused to stop.